Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who I'm interviewing right now, this is Frank Mihalic, which I've been following Frank for quite some time. I've definitely been in the shadows, Frank, because I can't believe we haven't, crossed paths so many different times. Top fishing, shore fishing, surf fishing. I mean, you're basically in my old backyard, man. So it blew my mind when you were telling me you were working in Turnersville the other day.
It's funny, but you kind of keep in a small, tight circle. I have my group of friends. I do what I do on the tugboats, and I do what I do at work. And it's funny, you can just kind of run around the same circles. And geez, we probably crossed paths a few times and just never knew who each other was.
I know for sure, man. Because I mean, I even read articles growing up. You've been part of the Fisherman magazine for quite some time now, right?
Oh yeah, it's been probably 25 years or so I've been writing for the Fisherman magazine.
Right. So Frank, I've read your articles 13, 14 years old at my uncle's house. He would keep a stack of them next to the toilet, right? So I
Oh,
remember every winter, man, when we were down for the count, boat was pulled for the season. I'm going through all the old Fisherman magazines, and I can't tell you how many articles I've read of yours, dude. So it's like it's mind blowing to finally be able to sit down with you and kind of pick your brain on what makes you tick.
awesome. I'm glad to help. I really do enjoy sharing information. Well, but I'm not the kind of guy that wants to put myself in a position where other people might think I'm better than them. That's just not how I roll. You know what I mean? I'm not that guy, and I certainly don't want to be that guy.
For sure, Frank, and I've picked that up, man. I mean, I've even done my research, and a couple of the podcasts that I've seen you on, you emphasize that super strong, man. Like, I don't want to outshine anybody. I don't want to outclout anybody. In the new kids' terms, I don't want to make anybody feel less than. I just literally am here to share what I know, and if I can help, I'm here to help. And I think that's something me and you, Frank, have in common, buddy. Because give you the shirt off my back if you were cold.
Same thing. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've met on boats, and I remember, geez, I think it was one of the first times I was fishing on a trip on the Monger, and somehow I went out on a trip on the Monger. It was kind of I got invited late, and it was a Saturday, and then I had another charter that I got on Sunday because all of a sudden the weather got good, and I think I was going on Fever on Sunday, and I remember I didn't have enough rigs tied. And a couple of the guys that I just met on the Monger that day were like, "Oh, Frank, wait a minute, here, come take what I got some for you." And they all gave me like three or four rigs, and I was like, "Wow, this is like such a different vibe than being on a head boat or being on with any other boat in the past. That it's really much more of a group of friends that almost like you just never met. It was really amazing."
And that's not like you even spoke of. It's not common, man. I mean, I know a lot of the head boats I've been on. It's kind of everyone for themselves. Other than the captain and the mates, it's like, they none of the guys on the boat, unless you're with them, want to be bothered teaching you how to do anything or help you out with anything. I mean, they're trying to outfish you. They don't want you to catch the next big one.
True.
Yeah, so that's good, man. That's good that you found camaraderie like that. Especially on a charter boat. Speaking of the charter boats, Frank, I watched a previous podcast you did, and you were speaking about um, buying out or like having the charter completely bought for the season, right?
Yep.
So how does that work? Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that? How do you set that up, and how do you even go about doing that?
Sure. Well, the boats, I mean, the boats that I'm so lucky to fish on are in such high demand. Like when I fish on Fishmonger, it just so happened they're not my charters. My friend will own that charter that day, and they will invite me to fish on that boat. So it's easy. Some of the other boats that I fish on, like Allison's Nightmare out of Cape May, Fishing Fever out of Cape May, they're actually my charters. And the way that works is if I have every Saturday, just say I have every Saturday and Sunday in December, just hypothetically. Say I have and usually the way it works is me and my buddy Mark will gang up where I'll have every Saturday in December and Mark will have every Sunday in December. So Mark and Sully invites me on all of their trips, and I invite them on all my trips. So that gives us three guys out of six. So that means I have three other guys that I'll rotate in and out. But what'll happen is when we're done our charters this year, next December, I own those Saturdays in December and Mark owns the Sundays in December. So it
Right.
doesn't, I mean, I've been approached by people who were so pompous as to think, I have cash, I'll get that boat. It's like, nah, bro, you won't. I hate to say this, your best chance of getting on that boat is to befriend me. And if you're acting the way you're acting, we're not going to be friends. So it's cool. Just, see you later.
What kind of blew me away was the camaraderie that you're able to build with doing the charters like that, man. So it's like it becomes so much more of a personal thing when you're able to know who's actually going to be on the charter the next time, you know?
Oh yeah, well that's the idea of chartering a six-pack boat. I mean, if it's me and Mark and Sully, we have three guys. I only need to pick three more guys. So I always fill my charters. Mark and Sully fill their charters, and we act. We have some friends that go with both of us,
Right.
but it's really a cool time. And getting back to the boats, I mean, these boats like Jerry Pastorino running the Fishmonger, Jerry is so good that if you want to charter the Fishmonger, it's okay. Give Jerry a call, speak to Marie, tell her you'd like a Blackfish charter. Marie will get back to you maybe in a couple months. Maybe there's an opening on a Wednesday in December. Okay. I know you think you're going to want a Saturday in December. That's not going to happen. But when Marie offers you a Wednesday in December, get your checkbook out, write the check, and send it to her.
Right.
Because when you have a 10-pack boat like the Monger in December, you're going to have people climbing over you to get on that boat. So it's your job as a charter master to fill that boat. It's
Yeah.
your job to pay the toll and get the charter. Now, when you have that Wednesday, maybe your crew is very good. Maybe you guys get along really good with the captain. You have a great time. Maybe next year they have a couple more dates that you can get. Maybe something happens and you can get a Saturday or a Sunday. But just because you have a fat bank account doesn't mean you're going to call up one of the best boats on the East Coast and say, hey, Cat, I got some cash. Let me jump on your boat. It's like, I guess you kind of got to earn that spot a little bit. And I'm a very lucky man that I have friends that we cooperate with quite well.
And that's good though, man, because it holds not only the charter more like personal, but it holds it in like a very sought after place, amongst the other charters, man. Because if you could be bought out, what are you really worth, man? At the end of the day, it's not about the fishing, it's not about the charter you're taking out. It's literally about a lump sum of money, and that's it. So I mean, that speaks volumes that he won't just allow someone that's willing to pay more just jump over you.
Oh yeah, that's not what it's about. I mean, in this camaraderie, this whole idea of having to be able to have your group go out with you is awesome, because there's days when I've had people invite me on their group and I really didn't know too many people in that charter, but I was fishing next to the window and we got on a new spot and Jerry's fishing out of his window and I'm fishing kind of next to him, right next to the house. And all of a sudden we started getting hot and it got like insanely crazy for a period of a time, probably of like an hour or so, where I don't think I've ever caught so many blackfish in my life, and big ones. And,
Wow.
and people start looking at you a little crazy. And we all have our, Jerry, he has that day almost every day. The guy's one of the most skilled fishermen I've ever seen. And me, I just get lucky every now and then. So with that.
I listen. I get it. Trust me. But you know what that tells me, Frank? It tells me like, there's hope out there for me. I don't know if you see this little guy over here, but I got about 2 more months, man, and I have to pass the charting version of the captain's license. Right. That's all I have. I got to get through this friggin' charting and plotting, dude, and I hopefully will have my captain's license. So, I have that aspiration, or I inspire to be that northern captain to where it's sought after. I can bring the knowledge that I've gained with me all these years, and hopefully more to earn and have someone see value in that. You know what I mean? Like, it brings hope to me. It really does, man. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the future brings for a new captain on the scene. That's for sure, man.
Absolutely. And it's funny because the guys that just view you on Facebook, they're impressed with the catch that they see on the dock at the end of the day, or they're impressed when they see, your charter's caught a really nice blackfish. What they don't see is the amount of work you put in, the amount of work that your mate puts in an hour before I get there in the morning.
Right.
And when we pull into the dock, you guys are sitting there cleaning fish for an extra couple hours. I mean, the work, I mean, talk about a labor of love. And that's where, and they do it with a smile on their face, and they're so glad to do it. And I'm just so honored to be part of such an awesome group of guys such as that. Because there's some captains that I fished with a couple times and some quite a few times. And maybe it's not such a cool experience. And, for whatever reason, it's just time for me to go fish somewhere else. I mean,
right. And you know what, Frank, it tells a lot about you too, though, bud, because, I've had people in the past that I've taken out before, even being licensed, to disposable friends, you take out and you find them once you get onto a number that you said was, your great uncle's favorite spot and his favorite number, taking screenshots, of your screen, dude. So, I mean, you could literally be that person, you literally give all of this, how do I say, due, you know, appreciation to the captain, man. Like without, just jumping on your own boat and going out there to around about the same numbers or even the same numbers. So it says volumes about you, Frank. It really does, man.
yeah, we've got a few unwritten rules in our group. Number one is if you have Navonics app running on your phone, I'll take your phone, shut it off, and you'll never be invited on any of my charters again. And
Yeah.
we leave it at that. And I actually know people that have stolen these captains' numbers. I mean, talk about bad blood.
Right.
I feel bad for the people that did it because I'm just not that kind of guy. But I'm very protective of my friends, and I think they deserve more respect than that. And it's sure not going to be me or any of my buddies
Right.
that stoop that low.
No, and that's amazing, Frank. It really is, dude. Because again, you know what? You're talking about a captain that doesn't see a monetary value over the charters that he has, and you're talking about the charters that he has not seeing just blackout numbers and being like, all we got to do is get my buddy's boat and we can get out here. We don't need to spend this money. So I can't wait to meet a group of you guys, dude. I really can't, man, because you guys seem like we all think alike here, and that's hard to find in the fishing industry, dude. It really is, man.
It is, yeah, but stealing somebody's numbers, man, it's like stealing their money.
Yeah.
You hop on your buddy's center console and he goes out there with a spot lock, and you guys, because when you're fishing on a number, it's not like, you might be out there fishing on a 300-foot freighter. You're not fishing the entire freighter. You're fishing a certain section of it that might be broken apart, or maybe because of the sea conditions this day, this particular spot is holding fish better. Sometimes when you're fishing smaller structure, it's different. Sometimes when you're fishing like a reef site that has tanks on it, it's not just a tank sitting on the bottom, because when they did that at first, they sunk into the sand. So now they go out and they drop a hopper full of concrete rubble, then they put a tank on top of it. And sometimes those fish, you'll actually watch them on the machine, and you can see a school of striped bass coming by, or maybe the dogfish are really bad, and you can see all the fish on the machine. The blackfish will actually they'll kind of get absorbed by the wreck, and you don't see them, and
Right.
everything down, and you get your dogfish or you get your stripers, and about 15-20 minutes after everything passes by, you'll see the blackfish start coming out of the structure again. In something small like the tank, they'll actually swim kind of in a school where they'll swim around the tank, where it's because it's not a very big structure. And
Sure.
it's amazing to see it, like with these new electronics nowadays, to be able to pin it down where I can see them come out on the scope, and then I can see them on the wide angle. I can see them still moving around the structure, and then
Right.
I can see them directly under us again, and then we start getting fish. So it's there's a lot more to those numbers than just being kind of close. It's how you use them as well.
I agree. I agree, guys. If you're listening to this or watching this and you've never been able to go out on your own and try to get on a set of numbers, right? So, just speaking from my own experience, had a buddy. I still have a buddy named Jim. He's got a 21-foot pro line. So we decided to run offshore 15, 16 miles out, and we try to hit GE Reef. We try to hit the AC Reef, and we get out on these supposable numbers on the chart, right? And when I tell you guys, it is almost impossible. If you have wind, you have a little bit of current, you have chop, you have, I mean, to anchor, spot lock's a whole nother animal. But to try to anchor and to get accustomed to anchoring where your boat can swing over that piece of structure and you could fish successfully, I mean, it's a whole nother ball game, Frank. I mean, that takes skill and definitely a lot of patience for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, it's not just it's not just getting on the structure, it's getting on the part of the structure where the fish are. Yeah, it's and being able to double anchor. I mean, I know a lot of guys that double anchor with 24-foot boats, and they're very skilled guys for being regular recreational fishermen. They're that borderline group that like they could be captains if they wanted to.
Right.
If I'm doing that for my own boat, which now there's a motor on the center console that I run, there's a trolling motor there, but I would always just use a Danforth, drop back a couple hundred feet, and then I would power off the structure opposite the tide and drop a grapple down off the bow. So I would have a Danforth out the front, a grapple out this way, and I could use that to toggle between them. I could walk a little bit back or over, and it usually got the job done quite easily, but nothing like spreading doubles, man.
So if you guys followed any of that, that just literally opened the Pandora's box for you to be able to anchor over a piece of structure. You know, Frank, we didn't have guys like you teaching us this when we decided to take this 21-foot pro line offshore, dude. It was, you know, you need a wreck anchor. If you don't have a wreck anchor, you're not going to be successful. We're like, nah, screw that. You know, I've anchored 1,000 times in the back bay. I got the anchoring down. It's a whole different ball game offshore, guys. So if you listen to what he just said, that's giving you that key to be able to position your boat in such a way to where you can be successful, or even move it if you're not successful, and not move it 1,000 feet, you know, with the current, but to be able to just critique it to where you're able to actually sweep over, you know, a piece of structure that's small.
Oh yeah, and having a Danforth anchor that sets quick and deep too. I mean, I use a Danforth deep set high tensile that's for like a 30-foot boat. I use that for a 21, and then I use an 8-foot length, a 3/8 inch triple B chain.
Oh
That
yeah,
inch is pretty large, but the triple B chain, it's really used for like sailing boats and windlasses. Where the
sure.
triple B, instead of the links being elongated, they're rounder. So in like a 12-inch section of chain of regular 3/8 inch chain, there might be 10 links, but in triple B there'll be like 14.
Right,
So
right.
it makes that shorter length of chain heavier. So when you drop that anchor, is when you're backing up and you're ready to come tight, you're gonna stop like somebody hit the brakes.
You're grabbing something. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you're dropping in 100 foot of water, and maybe there's another piece of structure that's just off your bow, and you don't want to drop into that, so you're dropping really really short. So you really need to get that thing to drop down, come tight, get back into position, and don't pull on the anchor. Just let the line go out, and then when you're at enough of an angle, then come tight on it. Because if you just drop it down, even if you're short, if you start coming tight on that thing, you're just going to start lifting it up.
Right, sure, sure. And you know what? That kind of brings me into my next question, Frank. Spot lock or no spot lock? So what are your feelings on spot lock personally before you get started, right? Because I almost know your opinion on this. But before you get started, my own opinion, I think if you use it as another tool, then you're in the money. You're in the right state of mind. But if you're using it to kind of, you know, be lazy or become lazy and not still learn, not still put the time in to figure out, you know, where you need to be, then I feel like it's almost enabling you to do something that I don't think you even deserve to possibly do. So, you know, please, you know, tell me your side.
Yeah, right on. I feel the same way. I know some guys that use spot lock, and they're exceptionally skilled guys. And these guys use it to their advantage, because when we go out and we're dropping 2 hooks, and then we have to pick them up and move on to our next spot, these guys have another 15 minutes of fishing time on the spot. By the time we pick up our 2 hooks, steamed in a new spot, drop one, drop the other, come back, get tight, if they just have to hit a button, drive over there, hit another button, boom, they're ready to go. They have 15 more minutes of lines in the water for
Sure.
each. So if we hit 6 drops, you're talking about an extra hour and a half of fishing time. It's like, really? Yeah. And if you couple that with guys that are just damn good fishermen, don't wonder why they win the tournaments.
Right, for sure,
And
And
couple this with 38-foot center consoles. It's like, oh my God, like what a machine. You don't really want for much fishing on a boat like that.
no, that's for sure, man. I've been out a couple times, Frank, where I'll follow these guys out. I remember this is early in my offshore game where, it's foggy in the morning. And again, same pro line, same boat, not a center console, it's a little cuddy and, single engine. We're running that 15, 20 miles offshore. And all we're following is a compass reading or a heading, that's all we got. We're going 180 out of the friggin' inlet out of Atlantic City. And we're like, okay, we know when we reach that 20-mile mark, something is going to be under us. And we see these, 31 foot, 32 foot, even 50 feet friggin' yellowfins out there, dude. Just beautiful pieces of machinery with a spot lock just sitting right on top of what they need to, man. So you're right. It's almost like giving the fishermen, a Ferrari compared to what was, a Cadillac.
Yeah, but these are guys that, I mean, keep in mind when I first started fishing, when I had my first boat, I had a tin boat when I turned 17 and I had a truck and I had a 5 horsepower motor and I thought I died and went to heaven. But my grandpop had boats. When I was a little kid, we had a boat in Brigantine. We had a boat at the end of the street. So I always fished on boats with my family, with my dad, my grandpa. But as I got old enough to have my own boat, when I turned like 18, I had my own fiberglass boat, and I would run out of Delaware Bay. And I had Loran C at the time, and I had a depth finder. It wasn't it was actually an LCD Hummingbird. It was much newer than the then like Ray Jeff flashers.
Sure. Oh yes.
But I made it a point that when I navigated, I always made it a point to use my compass and my watch because I knew if when I left the canal by the ferry that if I ran a certain heading for like 22 minutes, I would be in like in the eastern side of the 60-foot slough, and I knew if I would be running it like I think 4,200 RPMs for such and such a minute. It's been a lot of years, but just being able to navigate with a compass and a watch, it's really important because if you go out there and blow a fuse and you can't find your way home, shame on you.
I agree, and that's kind of where we were at, Frank. It was such a small, well, not really a small boat, but it was a boat with 2 guys on it that were just going offshore for the first couple times, dude. So to know that if we turned around in any direction and we headed, like you said, a good half an hour to 25 minutes the opposite direction than what we came, we were going home. We were going to see some kind of land, So that was always our fail safe when it comes to that. Let's switch gears here, man. Let's talk about the elephant in the room and the Century rod, the Pro Togger. I mean, can you tell the listeners? I mean, how did you get started with Century, and where are you at today with Century?
Well, Century, it's funny you hit on that because that is my baby. That was all me, and it started when I was at a boat show and I was doing a seminar. And I released my schedule. And before I know it, I got approached by Ryan White, who runs Hatteras Jacks. He's the U.S. importer that imports all the Century blanks into the USA. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, Frank, can I talk to you?" And we started talking one night about a blackfish rod. And we got deeply, deeply into it. It just so happened a couple of days later, he was coming up and he was at a shop in Avalon at one of the custom rod shops that does a lot of Century rods. And we were in there messing around with a couple rods, and I had this tuna rod, and Ryan was like, "Here, check this out." And I took this rod, and Ryan took the line and he held it to the floor. And I picked the rod up like I usually do, and I kind of put it in my gut, and I cranked down the drag, reeled it down, and I was lifting to the point where I was applying so much lifting pressure to him that I was like lifting my heels off the ground.
Goodness.
And Ryan was like, he said, "I was impressed with that because I knew that you knew how to use gear because you need how to do that, whether it's light tackle or heavy tackle." So that kind of developed our relationship right off the bat, when we got into the Pro Togger, I was working with a couple other rod companies at the time, and I won't work with a rod with any company who just wants to give me free stuff and hear how great it is. It's just, it doesn't interest me. I'm really interested in pushing the limits, pushing the envelope, taking something good and making it just a little bit better and a little bit greater.
Sure, yeah.
And Ryan, because they build these rods as like small batch blanks in the UK, we actually took a rod that Ryan made at the time, and it was supposed to be a blackfish rod, and it was called Toggy style.
Okay.
And I looked at it, and I was just like, right off the bat, like, the name didn't really do much for me.
Right.
But but we wanted to work together, and he sent one to me, and I tried it out, and it was nice. The action was nice. It was a little bit mushy. Like the first foot was a little stiff, and then the second 12 inches from the tip just kind of collapsed. It kind of, where like it didn't have a smooth power band. It lacked some sensitivity, and the balance was off.
Right.
The handle, the way the handle was laid out, it didn't balance the rod properly. So Ryan and I got together, and we reworked the handle, and we got to that blank. And one of the nice things that we could do with Century was we said, okay, the top 24 inches, we want to add 20% of the strength to that blank. The top the top 12 inches, we want to decrease it by 10%. And then to increase the sensitivity, we wanted to add this Textreme coating, which is like a woven kind of covering around the outside.
Sure.
And the rod was just dead on, you know.
Wow.
We did things like we spiral wrapped it, and that short handle, that short butt that we made with the nice big foregrip and the trigger grip handle, they're all things that I found are really necessary for me to be comfortable when I'm tog fishing in December and my hands are cold and they're slippery with the crabs. And maybe I have to put the rod out and I want to flip up towards the anchor line. I really want that trigger grip. And these are things that are specific for me.
Right.
Everybody might not like them, but it works great for me. So if there's a guy who isn't a really experienced tog fisherman and he's looking to break up to that next level, this is just going to shorten that learning curve for him.
Right, right. And even Frank, are the blanks still available to where, like, if you didn't want the trigger grip or you didn't want certain guides on it, you could still go with your blank and have that made to your custom fit, right?
Oh, right. That Pro Togger blank is 7 foot 10 inches long. They're available from Hatteras Jacks. You can call Hatteras Jacks, call Ryan White, and ask him to send you a blank. It's an excellent blank for throwing bucktails at snook. Great for tarpon fishing around the bridges.
Right.
Great for grouper fishing. You know, it really is an extremely versatile blank, and you can lay that thing out any way you want. It just turned out good for me that once I started using it, I have a few double-digit fish on it, and I did pretty well. And the one day when I was out fishing, and my friend Sully hopped on the boat this day, and we were on Fever,
Mhm.
and he was like, "Yeah, Frank, I went to go buy your rod, and they didn't have it in this tackle shop, and they said they couldn't order it, and they didn't really know what they were talking about, and they sold me this black hole." I'm like, "Oh, that's a nice rod, bro. Let me know how you like it, and if you want to, you can try mine out." Because when I go on a boat, I always bring 3 Pro Toggers. 2 of them are mine. So if I get snagged on the bottom, I immediately break off and grab the other one, and the mate re-rigs my number 1 rod.
That's
But
smart.
I always bring an extra in case anybody else wants to use one. They're welcome to. Well, it just so happened this one day on Fever, we were kind of blessed with a window that we have a thing with our captains with our boats that if we ever jump on the boat that day and the window weather opens up and the conditions are right, we want to go trophy hunting, where we'll run wherever the captain wants to run, and
Right.
we'll boat 4 o'clock in the morning, and we'll give them some extra money and let's make a day out of it. It just so happened this day I was fishing a slider rig all morning. The current was running a little bit. The current started to slack out, and I wanted to switch to a single crab. So I started fishing my rod that had a sweetheart rig on it. And I said to Sully, hey, Sully, if you want to use my rod, here it is. It just so happened he grabbed my rod, put some bait on it, red sinker and all, flipped it out, caught a couple small fish. Next thing you know, I look over and he's doubled over and he's pinned to the rail, and he caught the new New Jersey state record blackfish that day.
Wow, right.
It was phenomenal for me because I was on the port side next to the house. Sully was starboard side in the back corner. So I just took my camera out and started firing off these pictures that I'm so happy that he caught that fish, because we got pictures that we would have never gotten if anybody else would have caught that fish.
Sure. And Frank, listen, I mean, honestly, how did that make you feel when, to have a guy go out, try to purchase your custom build of a century, not have it offered, then have, all the stars align where you bring that extra setup on the boat, and he just so happens to put his down, grab yours, and catch that fish with something that you custom designed. I mean, how did that make you feel, dude? I mean, explain to the guys.
A lot of pride for me, but you know what? That doesn't take anything away from Sully, because he is such a gentleman. He's an excellent fisherman who's been talking a long time, and he deserves that more than anybody. So I certainly can't say that if anybody else would have caught it, nobody deserves it more than him. And just God bless him for it. I'm just so glad that I was there to witness that. That was just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I've heard that story a couple times, Frank, and every time I hear it, I you can almost like, listen to it or read it and kind of visualize yourself in that scenario, and to see something, that big come over the rail, not to mention the freaking record, dude, and then have it on a custom piece. Like, I mean, goodness, man, Frank, I used to custom design and build lures, plugs, and there was one time I put this plug together. It was swimming upside down, all weird. The lip, placement was off. But guess what? That thing caught a striper, dude. And the feeling I had when I landed that freaking striper off something that I created, dude, I can only imagine that 10 times what you felt on that boat, dude.
Oh, absolutely. And part of the reasons why this happened, like I said, I mean, I've been tog fishing for a lot of years, and when I started to get really back into doing it offshore again, the one of the days that I did this, it was on Fever, and I'll never forget it. It was 15 degrees, and it was like the day after Christmas, and I'm on the boat it was an open boat trip. I didn't know all the guys, but I know I was with Nino, Aversa, and Ronnie. So it was me, Nino, Ronnie, and a few other guys, and it was so cold. I was using a rod that I bought that I had a couple double-digit fish on already, but it was an IMA graphite rod. I was using an Abu 7000 HSN reel. So it was a pretty good size Abu, high speed, narrow. And sure. I like Abus because I could take them apart and I had spare parts. I could hot rod them up real nice. But it was so cold this day, and there were more double-digit fish coming over the rail than I ever saw.
Wow.
I caught one. The next one, my rod blew up. And it blew up like at the stripper guide. The next rod I was fishing, it was so cold that the dogs on the Abu reel were not engaging on the spool. So I would drop down, I would lock the reel up, felt good. I'd get boom, boom, boom. I'd set the hook, it would go bzzz.
Yep. Yeah. I've been there, buddy. It sucks, dude.
Feeling like a total novice, I ended up using one of the captain's rods for the rest of the day. And on the way home, I called up a good friend of mine, Joe Zagorski, and said, what kind of rod are you using? Who made that? What kind of reel are you using? Where do I get that? I called the Daiwa sales rep. I ordered 2 Saltiga 15s. I talked to another guy. He was building me 2 rods. By the time I got home, I spent like $1,600. But in a couple of weeks, at least I solved my blackfish using junk gear causes you to lose fish. I got over that dilemma quick.
Oh yeah, and that kind of led me into the next question of what power plant are you putting on the Pro Togger, and what size power plant are you putting on that Pro Togger?
The Daiwa Saltiga 15.
Yeah.
Definitely not a high speed. It's just a regular 5.3 or 5.1 gear ratio.
Okay.
That's where you want to be. You definitely don't want anything with any kind of a higher gear ratio, because if you get something like a high speed reel, like a 6.1, when you gain speed, you lose power.
Okay.
So if you ever put on a 12-ounce weight and dropped it to the bottom and you go to reel it up and you just turn your handle and all of a sudden it can't come up and now you have to like lift your rod and reel on the way down because your gear in your reel is too tall. It's
Mm.
basically like if you're setting up a drag race car, the diameter of your rear wheels has to differentiate the gear in your differential
Sure.
because it all has to do with the diameter of the spool as well. So you've got to have that medium speed, like 5.1 gear ratio, and you can lock that down and you'll do just fine with blackfish on that. You're not going to tear that up. That being said, I had that same rod and reel fishing for black drum in Delaware Bay with
Yeah.
a rod guide and with crank down drag and 65-pound line because it was a little too heavy a line and a little too tight drag, that when I sent my reels for service at the end of the year, you could actually see the main shaft actually had twisted.
Oh man, dude.
Yeah, no, like if I showed you the picture, it's on my phone, you could see it actually just like whoop. I was like, what?
Goodness. And listen, you made the comment earlier about having a drag car. You literally twisted the friggin' axle or the drive shaft in the friggin' drag car. I mean, it
Yeah.
happens all the time when you put too much power or stress behind the wheels.
Oh yeah, and it's nice to sit. We're sitting here having this casual conversation. It's a lot of engineering that goes into making that car. That car can go from here to there in 6 seconds. Six
Right.
seconds. They didn't just get it that way. It
Right.
took them several months of a lot of trial and error to
Yeah.
get that set up just right. Because every car, even though that engine and that transmission and that differential and that tire is all the same, every car still has its own little tweaking to be done. And
Sure.
this with the Pro Togger, as much as I love my Saltiga 15s, I made the choice to use 50-pound braid. I don't
Okay.
use 5 pound, I use 50 because it slips through the current a little bit easier. Some of the reef sites we fish, like Reef Site 11, it's like off of Delaware Bay. It has a lot of current. And if I use 65-pound braid, 65 is just overkill.
Yeah.
And it actually feels heavier, it feels thicker, and I feel a little more drag in the water when I'm using 65. 50-pound Iowa J Braid 8, I like the multicolor, and that's probably going to break around 100 pounds anyway.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Even at 50, then even at 50, it'll break around 100. Yeah. So, I mean, really, you can't go wrong with that. I haven't tried the J braid yet, but same buddy that I told you I went offshore with, my buddy Jimbo, loves the friggin' J braid, and he talks it up and down, man, on why the multicolors, the color to go with, because he can count the coloration pattern change and see how many depth or how many feet he's down or how many yards he's out when he's trolling with it, or he swears up and down with the J braid, man.
Right. Yeah, I like the multicolor for that reason. I know when it's getting close to the bottom, so I know when it's cold out, a lot of times I'll flip the bait out and I'll let it fall and I'll kind of pull my hands up inside my cuffs a little bit,
Oh,
kind of sitting there holding the rod like this, and I'm watching the line go down, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoop, okay.
we're there. We're there. We got to be close anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, man. So listen, I can't tell you how amazing it is to sit here and talk with someone that I consider a friggin' legend in the sport, man. So breaking into the fall season, breaking into the fall transition, where are you headed first? What's the first trip? What are you looking for on the roster?
Well, we kind of start pre-fishing. Usually right about now we're starting to fish, but if you're fishing inshore of the rock piles like North Jersey or even inshore to reef sites in South Jersey, you're going to be covered up with sea bass and porgies for right now. But we do try to find some spots where we can get offshore a little bit, get on some rocks, and we like to fish jigs with crabs. It's a lot of fun, and I'll get really in tune with that jig bite. I'm really not going to. There's really no need to fish the Pro Togger just now because we're not hunting trophies right now. The Pro Togger is strictly a rig rod. It's meant to fish. I usually fish a 10-ounce weight with it and a rig, and that's really what that's made to do. So
Oh,
that's not where you want to go if you're fishing a jig. Fishing a jig, you want to go with like a weapon mag taper like a 7-foot 10-inch mag taper, and it's just spot on. That's actually a rod that I was catching black drum with in the spring on a spinning rod, and what a blast.
So I've been told by a friend of mine that also has a podcast. He interviewed you a while back, and he swears about the Mag Junior. Am I saying that right? The Mag Junior
Weapon. We've done something with Century over the last couple years, where after the Pro Togger turned out so well, I spoke to Ryan, and our total lineup below the Pro Togger, it was like the Demon, the Weapon Junior, and the Weapon, and then the Pro Togger, and that was it. Well, we came up with a way to make the Weapon a little heavier. We made the Weapon Junior a little heavier. What we did was we took that Weapon Junior, we took the blank, left it alone. We took the diameter of the blank and blew it up a little bit, but we made the walls of the blank thinner.
Oh,
Okay, so that made the blank have a stiffer action,
right.
but not gain any weight.
Wow, Frank. Freaking wow.
So now we have the Weapon Junior and then the Weapon Junior mag taper. Then we have the Weapon, and now we have the Weapon mag taper. So we've begun to fill in these vacancies that we had in our rod lineup.
Sure, and that, I want to say, I'm sure the fans and the people that have already fished these rods were waiting for that and yearning for that, because I'm a rod fanatic, dude. I can't say a rod fanatic, but I can say a balance fanatic. I can say an amazing combo fanatic, right? So when I hold a combo in my hands, to be able to balance that thing perfectly with two fingers, and I'm speaking of my inshore setups and my surf setups, to where it's not beating your shoulder up when you're whipping it all friggin' day, or it's not like a wet noodle when you're setting into something that's 50 and over pounds, I love them, Frank. I'm telling you, like a fanatic, it's probably undermining what I am when it comes to these combos. So to hear that you filled in all these little sections, dude, I'm literally drooling at the mouth, waiting to get a hold of one of these Centuries, dude. I really am, man.
I appreciate that, Aaron. I'm a very detail oriented guy, and I really have a hard time accepting less than what I have in mind.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Of course it does. Of course it does. It hit me like a ton of bricks just now. Hell yeah, it did.
But that's just luckily I'm working with people who listen to what I say, and they say, yeah, man, let's do it. Like Ryan and I, we were just talking about, we have the Pro Togger, and then we made the Pro Jigger out of the Weapon Junior mag taper lineup. So we have those in conventional and spinning. But now we're talking about making another lineup where instead of having the Weapon mag tapers, which I'm just smitten as a kitten about, man. I just love those.
Yeah.
But we're talking about taking them and trying to find a way to make them a little more economical, to lower the price point a little bit, because we do have some technology built into the Century product that everybody doesn't really need.
Right.
Like in a surf rod, you really want anti-twist technology.
Sure.
That when you load that rod and you launch it forward, if the rod is built on a conventional mandrel, as the rod is loaded, the blank twists.
Right.
And if you ever see pictures of it, you can recognize it.
Oh yeah.
Centuries don't do it because the way they wrap them on the mandrel, it's called anti-twist technology. It adds a serious amount of money into the manufacturing process. So we're talking about taking this mag taper, this Weapon mag taper, maybe removing the anti-twist technology and removing this thing that we do called gearbox technology, and it's still going to be a hell of a boat rod, but we might be able to drop that price point about $100. So maybe we can come in under that $500 range, just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to get a hold of.
Sure. And I mean, you know what? That's even more commendable. I mean, it just really shows, the value that you have, not only in the rods and the building of the rods, but the customers and the people that, truly appreciate the Century line, man. So, I'll tell you, Frank, that'll probably push me over the edge to where I'll have to go buy one at that point, you know? So I deal with, and I can't say I deal with, but I very much enjoy a cheaper setup called the 5 Star Customs, right? Not sponsored by them, not nothing, but that has always served my needs when it comes to a surf rod or a cheaper, kind of lower in the price range boat rod, right? I got my hands on a Century. I don't want to, I don't think it was the Pro Tagger. I think it was one of the mags, right? So I was only able to hold it at the show. That's all. That's all I did. I whipped this thing back and forth a couple times, and I'm telling you right now, it felt in your hands just as if it put that 5 star to on a whole nother, like, a whole nother wakeboard, dude. It wasn't the same, dude. And if you guys have a chance to go out to these demo days or any of the shows and get your hands on some of these rods, you'll see what I'm talking about, what I'm having a hard time explaining, because it's a feeling that you get when you hold quality in your hands compared to something else that is a lower price range. Not saying less quality, just a lower price range, lower price point. Nothing against 5 Star, but you could feel the difference, dude, for sure.
Oh yeah, Aaron. I mean, the Pro Togger, as beastly as it is, the totally assembled rod weighs 9.6 ounces.
Goodness, dude.
So, and it's a big boy. It's a big boy rod. I'll have that rod at every show and every seminar I'm doing, and people ask about it. I put the rod in their hands. I take the top shot loop off because I usually just got off of a boat somewhere, and I'll put it under my foot. And I tell the people, tighten up on the drag and reel the tip all the way down to the floor. And they're the rod's level and they're trying to lift it. I'm like, no, 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 bro. Let's look for power. Reel that rod tip all the way down to the floor. Okay, now put the rod butt in your gut. Put your hand on that foregrip. Now go. And when you really know how to put some power, they're like, oh my God, where did all that power come from? Half of it came from they had improper technique.
Right.
But when you have proper technique and you have a tool like that it doesn't really have a limit, there's really no top end to that. And I realized that when I looked at the pictures of Sully reeling up this 26-pound Tog, it was like, wow, like that rod's got a whole lot left in it.
Right. Sure.
And I know from fishing for drumfish with it too, it's like really I haven't discovered a limit to that rod yet, so I'm super excited about it. But on
I,
the other end too, talking about cheaper things, I'm a huge fan of Tsunami. I do a lot of work with Tsunami and with Maxell. They've done a lot of great things with their surf rods as well as their boat rods.
sure.
Now the Saltex, they're making hooks now, and
Yeah.
very much more affordable. And the quality, I mean, Century's top of the line, like best in the world. It's world class stuff, and I don't care who you're putting it up against, and I'll stand by that.
Right.
But when it comes to, we all have budgets. I really like the Saltex stuff, because if you see the video of me catching that black drum on the mag taper rod in the spring, if you notice, I have a Saltex reel in there. It's like the Saltex 5000 surf reel, and it was absolutely beastly.
Yeah, and Frank, speaking of Tsunami, it's pretty large down south here, man. Like, I know a lot of guys and even a lot of inshore captains, dude. A lot of their rigs that they have set up for their charters. I mean, they're mostly Tsunami setups, dude. I mean,
Mhm.
and there's a really well known guy that's a YouTuber down the street here. I mean, he swears by Tsunami, dude. Everything this guy throws, I'm assuming he's sponsored by him, but regardless, he swears by him, and they put a lot. He puts a lot of stress on these rods and reels, dude, and they
Mhm.
show up every time. So, I mean, I can't say anything bad about them, dude, at all.
Yeah, it's not always about the price. And one of the reasons why I love working with that company, they sent me a reel one time and I beat the hell out of it. I mean, I blackfished with it hard for like 4 months. And I had like 3 significant failure points on this reel. You
Mm-hmm.
know, one was like the reel foot. I actually ripped the reel off of the reel foot. One of them, yeah, no, I did. One of them had to do with the tolerance in the bolt that held the handle in the main shaft wasn't
Yep.
just right, and another issue had to do with the lubricants they were using didn't act very well in cold temperatures.
Okay.
So I called up, I spoke to the engineers, I wrapped it up, I made a nice note, I sent it to them. 2 weeks later, I had the reel back. Everything was addressed. And that reel foot, they took the reel foot, they let it sit on like a stand that had 4 bolts that go through it. And they took it and they recessed it into the bottom of the frame. And they not only recessed it in, but they moved it closer to the side where the handle is to eliminate any spring action.
Wow, dude.
I was like,
Right.
so awesome. I was so happy to help bring a solution to that.
For sure.
And that's why they have a lot of loyalty with me. They're just great people and a great company.
And to listen when you spoke, dude. I mean that means so much nowadays, dude. For them not to send you back something with 2 metal zip ties on it and some WD-40 in it. No, they actually tried to address the problem, dude. And it sounds like they found a solution to it with your help, Frank. So that's friggin' awesome, dude.
And it's been perfect ever since. And Aaron, if there's a company that, I've gone in the shows bringing handfuls of rods and hoodies and hats and said, yo, here you go, thanks a lot. I think we're kind of going in 2 different directions. And they, and I know a lot of guys, they would like sell all that stuff. I don't need no bad juju, man. Thanks for the opportunity. I love the stuff, but I'm going a different way.
I get it. And I'm sure you believe in the fish gods, dude. So when it comes down to the end of the day, dude, you're on that boat and the bite is hard. You want to be able to whisper up to the fish gods and get a bite going, dude. So that's what brings on that bad juju, stuff like that, dude, for sure.
Hey, I don't need no free stuff, man. I can buy my own just fine, thanks.
Yeah, no, and you know what? It speaks so many volumes, Frank, to where they listen to you when you speak, dude, and they addressed the problem and fixed it and just didn't booger it or tell you that, okay, well, let's move on to the next Frank and see what's going on here. He'll be happy with it in Florida.
Yeah.
No,
if I'm ripping reels off of reel foots, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But, Frank, listen, you said something that really struck me before I let you go and we end this, dude. You said in one of I can't remember what article it was, but it was something on the lines of anybody can be a hero at any time, right? So that's what got me, dude, and it brought me to the boat, it brought me to the rail, and it brought me to that bite where, like, that next friggin' white legger or that nice chunk of friggin' green crab, that could be the next record, dude. So saying something like that, man, gives a guy like myself, and I'm sure a lot of guys, hope when you're out there top fishing and it's getting hard, it's getting cold. I mean, you literally, it's down to that next piece of crap,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it has a lot to do with being confident in your crew. I mean, when I step on a boat with 6 guys or 10 guys, believe me, I know chances are I'm not the best fisherman on that deck that day. I know I'm lucky to be in the presence of those guys who are so damn good.
Right.
But to be in presence of those people, it would be a huge mistake to not check your ego on the dock, shut your mouth, keep your eyes open, and watch them. Dude, I fish next to Jerry. Jerry's fishing out of the window. If that doesn't humble you, he is the best bottom. I swear to God, he's the best bottom fisherman I've seen. He is scary, scary skilled.
Wow.
And I learn from him. I watch what he's doing.
Right.
He sees me watching him. Sometimes I'll ask him a question, and I'm not going to say what I ask him because it's kind of like whole new level kind of stuff
Sure.
that I want to divulge his information. But sometimes I'll ask him something, and I'll look him dead in the eye, and he'll like turn his head, and he knows I'm waiting for an answer, and he'll stop and I'll turn around and he'll say, "That was a really good question," and he'll give the answer, but he'll give me, and it's like that's a question that like you don't reach that level
Right.
being on boats when you're the best fisherman on a head boat. Who's better than you, bro?
Right.
You got to get out of your comfort zone, and if you're lucky and you get to fish with some of these guys like Tom Daff, and I mean they're so good. They're so good. Chris Voss, he's so good, and to not realize that maybe I'm not the best fisherman in the world. It's okay.
Sure.
I'll be a class guy, that's for sure, and I'll learn and I'll outwork every. I'm not going to be outworked, that's for sure. And I get lucky every now and then and pull a nice one.
Well, Frank, listen, this interview has been more than what I even expected it was going to be, buddy. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. You're welcome back on Anglers Anonymous any friggin' time you want. Before you go, Frank, can you plug yourself, man? Let the listeners know where they can find you, where they can find the Century Rods. Well, I mean, where you're going to be in the near future.
Well, I think we have a rod demo coming up on October 2nd in near Island Beach State Park. You can see that on the Advanced Fishing website, and that's in Jersey. If you're interested in Century Rods, give Ryan White a call at Hatteras Jacks. He's in the Outer Banks, and if you call Ryan and tell him you want if you want Frank Mihalic's Pro Togger, you'll get my version of it. One thing we did screw up a little bit too. And by the way, get me on Facebook, Frank Mihalic, FrankMihalic. It's just that simple. Friend request me, and I'll request you back. But things do get a little bit squirrely sometimes when it comes to these things. So I hope to make a whole bunch of new friends after this.
Sure, buddy, sure. And I hope so too, man. So, Frank, listen, stay in touch with me, buddy. And I hope the next time I head north, dude, something is in the works to where we get together and fish, buddy.
Aaron, let me know when you're coming up, because I'm a little busy during blackfish seasons. Every now and then I have an opening, but keep in touch. I'd love to get you out there.
Awesome, buddy. It's good talking to you, Frank.
Thank you. You too, Aaron.
All right, buddy.
Bye-bye.